I pulled into the driveway, taking a deep breath before shutting off the engine. The evening air was crisp, a perfect September night, the kind of night where memories are made. Tonight was supposed to be special. It was our 10-year anniversary, and I had planned a beautiful evening for my wife, Lisa. We had reservations at Ravello's, an elegant Italian restaurant where we had celebrated our engagement a decade ago. Lisa and I had built a life together that most would envy. We had a beautiful home in the suburbs, 2 wonderful kids, and a marriage that, at least from the outside, seemed perfect. People often told us we were the ideal couple. We were the ones who held hands in public, who shared inside jokes, who always seemed to be on the same page. But in recent months, something had changed. Lisa had become more distant, more absorbed in her phone. She started working late more often, her laughter seemed a little more forced, and our conversations had become shorter, less meaningful. I told myself it was just stress, her demanding job at the advertising agency, the pressure of raising 2 kids. But deep down, a small voice whispered that something was off. I shook off the thought as I stepped inside the house. "Lisa, I'm home," I called out, setting my keys on the counter. "In the bedroom, honey," her voice echoed back. I walked upstairs and found her standing in front of the mirror, fastening a pair of earrings. She looked stunning. Her dark blue dress clung to her body in a way that made my heart skip a beat. Her hair was curled, her makeup perfect, and for a moment, I forgot all my worries. She turned to me with a smile. "How do I look?" "Beautiful," I said, walking up behind her and wrapping my arms around her waist. "You always do." She leaned into me for a second, then gently pulled away. "We should go. I don't want to be late for our reservation." Something about the way she pulled away nagged at me. We arrived at Ravello's right on time, and the atmosphere was as enchanting as I remembered. Candlelight flickered on the tables, the scent of fresh basil and garlic filled the air, and soft violin music played in the background. As we were led to our table, Lisa seemed restless, checking her phone as soon as we sat down. I smiled at her. "Can you at least pretend to be excited to be here with me?" I teased. She let out a small laugh and placed her phone face down on the table. "I am excited. Sorry, just some last-minute work stuff." I wanted to believe her. The waiter arrived, and we ordered a bottle of red wine. Lisa was oddly quiet, her eyes darting toward her phone more than once. "Lisa, is something wrong?" I finally asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, not at all. I'm just a little tired." I didn't push further, but the uneasy feeling in my gut grew stronger. Halfway through our meal, Lisa's phone buzzed against the table. I watched as she glanced at the screen, and for a split second, I saw it. ***, a flicker of something on her face, ***. Guilt. Panic. Excitement. ***. It was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a neutral expression. "Work again?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Yeah," she said quickly, picking up her wineglass and taking a sip. But she didn't put her phone down this time. Instead, she tilted the screen slightly away from me, her fingers moving quickly as she typed a response. A knot tightened in my stomach. Something was wrong. She locked the phone and set it down without looking at me. I forced a smile. 10 years, huh?" She nodded, her smile more forced than real. "Yeah. Can you believe it?" "No," I said, watching her closely. "I really can't." For the rest of dinner, Lisa seemed distracted, barely touching her food. She laughed at my jokes but didn't really seem present. The woman sitting across from me felt like a stranger, someone I thought I knew but suddenly wasn't so sure about. When the check arrived, Lisa excused herself to use the restroom. As she walked away, she grabbed her phone and checked it before she was even out of sight. I stared at my empty plate, my mind racing. Had I just imagined it? Was I being paranoid? Or was this the beginning of something I wasn't ready to face? I drove us home in silence, my mind running through the evening in slow motion. Lisa sat beside me, scrolling through her phone, occasionally letting out a soft chuckle at something she was reading. It wasn't unusual for her to check her messages, but after what had just happened at dinner, every small action felt magnified. The way she had reacted to that text, the brief flash of emotion before she controlled herself, wasn't something I could just ignore. It wasn't the look of someone casually replying to a friend or a coworker. It was a look of urgency. of care, of something more. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, willing myself to stay calm. I had no proof of anything yet. Just a gut feeling. But gut feelings didn't just appear out of nowhere. Lisa must have noticed the tension in the car because she finally put her phone down and looked over at me. "You're quiet," she said. I forced a small smile, keeping my eyes on the road. "Just tired, I guess." She nodded, but there was something guarded in her expression. "It was a nice dinner," she offered after a moment. I glanced at her. "Yeah, it was." She turned back to her phone. We pulled into the driveway, and as soon as I parked, Lisa grabbed her purse and phone, getting out of the car almost too quickly. I followed her inside, my stomach twisting as I watched her head straight for the bathroom. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and I heard the faint sound of the lock turning. I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening. Nothing. The bathroom in our bedroom had a vent, and if I stood close enough to the door, I could hear muffled voices from inside. I had never cared before, never even thought about it. But now, with my mind buzzing with suspicion, I realized I could hear the faint sound of Lisa speaking in hushed tones. I stepped back, heart pounding. There was no one else in the house. The kids were at my parents' place for the night. She wasn't talking to me. So who was she talking to? I wanted to knock. I wanted to demand to know who she was speaking to, but I forced myself to wait. Storming in there wouldn't do anything but alert her that I was suspicious. I needed to be smart. A few minutes later, the lock clicked again, and Lisa emerged, looking completely composed. She gave me a small smile as she passed by. "I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed." I watched as she headed into the bedroom, setting her phone on her nightstand before slipping under the covers. I followed, taking my time changing into my sleepwear, my mind still racing. When I finally slid into bed beside her, she had already turned off the lamp, facing away from me. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathing. I waited. 15 minutes. 20. 30. When I was sure she was asleep, I slowly turned onto my side and reached for her phone. Locked. The passcode had been changed. A cold wave washed over me. Lisa and I had never had secrets. She had never changed her passcode before. We knew each other's pins, not because we needed to check each other's phones, but because we had nothing to hide. It had never been an issue. Until now. I set the phone back down as quietly as I could, staring at it in the darkness. Something was wrong. The next morning, Lisa woke up early and slipped out of bed before I could say anything. I lay there for a few moments, listening as she moved through the house, making coffee, getting ready. By the time I made my way downstairs, she was already dressed, a light floral blouse tucked neatly into fitted jeans, her hair styled in soft waves. It was casual, but put together. More than what she usually wore for a lazy Saturday at home. I poured myself a cup of coffee, watching her as she checked her phone again, biting her lip as she typed something. "Got plans today?" I asked casually. She looked up, startled for a fraction of a second before composing herself. "Oh, just running a few errands. Might meet up with Sarah for lunch." Sarah was one of her oldest friends. It was plausible. I sipped my coffee. "That sounds nice." She smiled, finishing up whatever she was typing before slipping her phone into her purse. "I won't be long." I nodded, watching as she grabbed her keys and headed for the door. I waited. The second the door closed behind her, I moved. I hurried upstairs, pulling open her nightstand drawer, checking for anything, receipts, notes, something. Nothing. Then, I had a thought. I went into our shared closet and pulled out the shoebox where we kept small personal items. Letters, old keepsakes, things that weren't important enough for a safe but still sentimental. Lisa rarely touched it. But when I opened it, I saw something new. A small, wrapped gift box sat at the very top. It was recent. The ribbon still looked crisp, the wrapping paper uncreased. I picked it up, feeling the weight of it. It was small, probably jewelry. I swallowed hard, turning it over. There was no tag. No indication of where it came from. I hesitated. If I opened it, I'd be crossing a line. It would confirm that I no longer trusted my wife. But that line had already been crossed, hadn't it? I pulled at the ribbon, slowly peeling back the paper. Inside was a silver bracelet, delicate and simple, with a small engraving on the inside. Asterisk, forever yours, D. Asterisk. My breath caught in my throat. D. My mind immediately went back to dinner last night. The text that had caused Lisa to react. Who the hell was D? I clenched the bracelet in my fist, my pulse hammering. I had my proof. It wasn't enough to confront her yet, but it was enough to tell me that I wasn't imagining things. Lisa was hiding something, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. I stared at the bracelet for what felt like an eternity, my fingers tightening around the delicate silver band. Forever yours, D. The words felt like a hammer pounding against my chest. Who the hell was D? I took a shaky breath and carefully placed the bracelet back in the box, wrapping it exactly as I had found it. I didn't want Lisa to suspect anything. Not yet. I needed more. I needed undeniable proof. I slid the box back into the shoebox, returning it to its exact spot. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing. What was my next move? Lisa had said she was meeting Sarah for lunch. That gave me a window of a few hours. If she was lying, I needed to know. I checked my watch. She had only left 5 minutes ago. If I hurried, I could still catch up to her. Grabbing my keys, I rushed out to my car, backing out of the driveway just as quickly as she had. As I turned onto the main road, I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, adrenaline, and dread ***. I had never followed my wife before. I had never even considered doing something like this. But then again, I had never thought I needed to. Lisa's car was easy to spot, a sleek white sedan that I had bought her as a birthday gift 3 years ago. I stayed a few cars behind, keeping my distance. She drove toward the city, not in the direction of Sarah's usual lunch spots. My hands tightened on the wheel. 15 minutes passed, then 20. Lisa never slowed down near any restaurants. She wasn't heading to meet Sarah. She was going somewhere else. My heart pounded as I watched her pull into a small cafe on the outskirts of downtown, not the kind of place she would normally go to. It was quieter, more secluded. A place where people wouldn't easily be recognized. I parked a block away, watching from my car as Lisa stepped inside. Then, a minute later, he arrived. A tall man, well-dressed in a fitted blazer and dark jeans, walked up to the cafe's entrance. His hair was neatly styled, and even from a distance, I could see the confidence in his posture. Lisa met him inside, and when she saw him, her entire face changed. The tension, the restlessness she had been carrying all morning melted away. She smiled. Not the polite smile she had given me at dinner. A real smile. The kind I hadn't seen in a long time. Something inside me cracked. I watched as they sat down at a small table near the window. Lisa leaned in, laughing softly at something he said. The way she looked at him, it was intimate. Familiar. I swallowed down the bile rising in my throat. I had seen enough. I took out my phone, snapped a few photos from my car, and sent them to Sarah with a simple message. Lisa said she was meeting you for lunch. Just wanted to check. Sarah responded almost immediately. What? I haven't spoken to Lisa in days. What's going on? The confirmation hit me like a punch to the gut. Lisa was lying. And now I had proof. I debated what to do next. Storm inside. Confront her right then and there? No. Not yet. I needed to know more. I took a deep breath and drove away. I got home before Lisa, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I didn't even remember the drive. My mind was replaying the moment over and over again. The smile, the way she leaned into him, the way she looked at him like he was her entire world. She used to look at me like that. I felt sick. I stepped inside the house and forced myself to act normal. If Lisa was lying to my face, I needed to be just as good at hiding my rage. 30 minutes later, I heard the garage door open. I braced myself. Lisa walked in, setting her purse on the counter like it was any other day. "Hey," she said, smiling. "How was your day?" I forced a casual tone. "Same as always." "How was lunch with Sarah?" She didn't even hesitate. "Oh, it was great," she said, pulling out a bottled water. "We caught up on everything. She told me about her new job, She seems really excited. I stared at her. She lied to my face. Effortlessly. And that's when I realized, this wasn't the first time, Lisa had done this before. I smiled, nodding as I took a sip of my coffee. That's nice. I'm glad you had a good time. She walked over and kissed my cheek. I fought the urge to pull away. I needed to play this smart. I needed to prepare for what came next. That night, as Lisa slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every breath she took felt like a lie. Every moment we had shared felt tainted. But I wasn't going to let my emotions control me. I was going to find out everything. And when the time was right, I was going to destroy her lies, piece by piece. I barely slept. The weight of what I had seen earlier that day pressed against my chest like a boulder, making it impossible to breathe normally. Lisa lay beside me, her breathing slow and steady, completely unaware of the war raging inside me. I turned onto my side, staring at the faint glow of her phone on the nightstand. Locked, that damn passcode. The fact that she had changed it only confirmed everything. She didn't want me seeing something. I fought the urge to shake her awake and demand answers. I wanted to ask, who is he? How long? But I knew she'd just lie. She was too good at it. No. I needed to be smart. I needed proof that she couldn't deny. By the time the alarm clock blared the next morning, I had made my decision. I was going to follow her again. Lisa stirred beside me, stretching with a soft yawn before turning over with a sleepy smile. Morning, she mumbled. I forced myself to relax, forcing a small smile back. Morning. She sat up, rubbing her eyes before reaching for her phone. The first thing she did was check her messages. I watched as her fingers moved quickly across the screen, her face unreadable. My gut twisted. I got up before she could notice me watching and headed to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. I needed to keep myself under control. The confrontation would come, but not yet. Downstairs, Lisa was already dressed for the day, sipping on a cup of coffee while scrolling through her phone. Any plans today? I asked casually. She looked up, blinking once before shaking her head. Just the usual. Might do some grocery shopping later. Lies. She never voluntarily went grocery shopping. That was always my thing. I nodded, pretending to be unconcerned as I grabbed my keys. I have some errands to run too. See you later. Yeah, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I left the house, parking down the street and waiting. It took 20 minutes before Lisa emerged. She walked out of the house in a different outfit, something much nicer than what she had been wearing inside. It was a small thing, but it told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just a casual trip. She was dressing for someone. I followed her at a distance, my stomach tightening with every turn she took. The route was familiar, but this time, she didn't stop at the cafe where she had met him before. Instead, she drove straight to a hotel. My hands clenched around the steering wheel. This was it. She pulled into the parking lot, glancing around as if checking to see if anyone was watching. Then, she stepped out, smoothing down her dress before walking inside. I counted the seconds. 1 minute. 2. 3. Then, he arrived. The same man from yesterday. I didn't know his real name yet, but I didn't need to. The way he carried himself, the way his eyes lit up when he saw Lisa, it told me everything. He wasn't just some fling. They had history. I grabbed my phone, snapping photo after photo as he followed Lisa inside. My heart pounded, anger mixing with something far worse. Betrayal. Lisa wasn't just cheating. She was meeting him in a hotel. How long had this been going on? Had she ever done this while I was home, watching the kids, thinking she was out running errands? Had she ever left our bed to be in his? I felt sick. I wanted to storm in there and rip the place apart. But I didn't. Instead, I waited. An hour passed. Then another. Lisa and Dee never came out. By the time she finally walked back to her car, her hair slightly tousled, her lipstick faded, my hands were shaking with fury. I took more pictures. She had no idea that her lies were falling apart. She had no idea that the life she had built with me was about to be destroyed. That night, I acted normal. I smiled when she smiled. I nodded when she talked. I let her lie to my face again when she told me she had spent the afternoon shopping. And all the while, I planned my next move. She thought she was in control. She had no idea that she was already caught. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I closed my eyes, but my mind was racing, replaying the events of the day over and over like a film on loop. Every detail, the way Lisa had changed clothes before leaving, the way she had checked her phone constantly, the way she had walked into that hotel without hesitation, was burned into my memory. The betrayal sat in my chest like a weight, pressing down harder with every breath I took. Next to me, Lisa slept peacefully, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. I turned my head and stared at her. How could she do this? How could she look me in the eyes every day and pretend? How long had she been playing me for a fool? My jaw clenched. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. This was deception. And I was done being deceived. I slipped out of bed quietly, making sure not to wake her. Moving through the house in the dark, I grabbed my laptop from the office and sat at the kitchen table. I had photos of Lisa and her lover from the past 2 days. I had timestamps. But I needed more. Opening a private browser window, I started searching for private investigators in the city. It didn't take long to find one. His name was Paul Ridley, a former cop turned investigator specializing in infidelity cases. His reviews were stellar. People praised his discretion and efficiency, calling him the best in town for uncovering the truth. I didn't need to read any more. I sent him an email. Subject * urgent investigation request. Hello. I need proof that my wife is having an affair. I have photos and some evidence already, but I need confirmation. Dates, places, names. Can we talk? Jim Carter. I sent the message and shut my laptop. By the time I made my way back upstairs, Lisa was still asleep, curled up under the blanket like she had nothing to worry about. I climbed into bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for morning. Waiting for the next move. The next day, Lisa acted completely normal. She kissed me on the cheek as she poured her coffee. "You look tired," she said with a small laugh. I forced a chuckle. "Didn't sleep well." She didn't press further. Of course she didn't. She had no idea that I was watching her now. She had no idea that her little secret was about to unravel. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked the screen. New email. Paul Ridley. I stepped out of the kitchen and opened it. "Jim, I'm available for a meeting today. Let me know when and where. Paul Ridley." I exhaled slowly, gripping my phone. This was happening. I replied quickly, arranging to meet him at a small diner on the other side of town. Lisa was in the living room by the time I walked back in, casually scrolling through her phone. I kept my voice even. "I have some errands to run. Be back later." She looked up and smiled. "Okay. Love you." I swallowed down the bitterness rising in my throat. I nodded and walked out the door. Paul Ridley was already waiting when I arrived at the diner. He was in his early 50s, with sharp eyes that had clearly seen too much in his lifetime. He had the look of a man who had once worn a badge and knew how to read people before they even spoke. I slid into the booth across from him, and he extended a hand. "Jim." I nodded, shaking his hand. "Yeah. Thanks for meeting me." He gave me a knowing look. "I take it your wife is cheating." I let out a slow breath. "Yeah. Tell me everything." I did. I told him about the anniversary dinner, the mysterious text, the suspicious behavior, the changed passcode, the meeting at the cafe, and finally, the hotel encounter. When I finished, Paul leaned back and crossed his arms. "You already have a lot," he admitted. "But if you want to make it airtight, I can run surveillance for the next few days. Get video proof, timestamps, license plates, the whole thing." I nodded. "That's exactly what I need." He slid a contract across the table. "I'll need an upfront deposit. Standard rates. If she's cheating, and it sounds like she is, you'll have everything you need by the end of the week." I signed without hesitation. Paul studied me for a moment. "You looking to file for divorce?" I let out a humorless chuckle. I don't know yet. His expression softened slightly. I get it. But let me give you some advice. When you find out the full truth, you'll know exactly what to do. I nodded. I hope so. We shook hands, and I left the diner feeling something I hadn't felt in days. Control. I spent the rest of the day pretending. Pretending I didn't know. Pretending I wasn't waiting for confirmation. Lisa continued as if nothing had changed. She smiled. She laughed. She kissed me before heading to bed that night. It made me sick. 2 days passed. Then 3. Then on the 4th day, I got the call from Paul. Jim, his voice was firm. You need to meet me. Now. My hands went clammy. What did you find? Paul hesitated. I think it's better if you see it for yourself. I swallowed hard. Where? He gave me an address. A motel on the other side of town. I hung up, my blood running cold. This was it. I drove there in silence, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. When I arrived, Paul was waiting in his car. He handed me an envelope. Everything's inside, he said. Photos. Video. My hands shook as I opened it. And then I saw her. Lisa. With him. Laughing. Kissing. Walking into a motel room together. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Paul exhaled. I can get more if you want. But I think this is all you need. I nodded, unable to speak. I had my proof. Now I had to decide what to do with it. I drove home in silence, the envelope of proof sitting on the passenger seat like a time bomb. My mind replayed the images over and over. Lisa smiling up at him, the way she touched his arm, the way they disappeared into that motel room like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like they had done it before. The worst part was that she looked happy. Not the forced, polite smile she had given me at dinner. Not the distracted half-smiles she had been throwing my way for the past few months. This was different. This was real. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had chosen him. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my hands were shaking from rage. But I forced myself to take a deep breath. I couldn't lose control. Not yet. Lisa was inside, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine in her hand when I walked in. She looked up and smiled like nothing had changed. Hey, she said. You were gone a while. I swallowed down the bitterness rising in my throat. Yeah. Just had some things to take care of. She nodded, taking a sip of wine. Dinner's in the oven. Should be ready in 20 minutes. My jaw clenched. Dinner. She had gone from sleeping with another man in a motel room to cooking dinner for me like everything was normal. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Instead, I forced a smile and sat down across from her. Thanks. I appreciate it. Her eyes flickered over me for a moment, searching. You okay? You seem off. I tilted my head. Do I? She hesitated, then shook her head with a soft chuckle. Never mind. Long day. You could say that. She had no idea. She had no clue that her entire world was about to collapse. I ate dinner with her that night, pretending like everything was normal. I watched her closely, every movement, every shift in her expression, the way she played with her hair as she talked about her boring day at work. Lies. Everything she said was a lie. And yet, she didn't look guilty. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't second-guessing her words. She was too comfortable. Because she thought she was getting away with it. By the time we finished eating, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I was going to make her sweat. The next morning, Lisa got up early again, slipping out of bed before I had the chance to say anything. I listened as she moved around the house, getting ready. Her phone buzzed from the nightstand. She grabbed it immediately, reading the message and typing something back so fast it was almost automatic. I closed my eyes, pretending to still be asleep. A few minutes later, she leaned over and pressed a kiss to my temple. I'm heading out. I'll see you later, okay? I forced a sleepy mumble. Where are you going? Just running errands. Lies. The bed shifted as she stood up, and a moment later, I heard the front door close. I waited. Waited until I heard the soft hum of her car backing out of the driveway. Then I sat up and grabbed my phone. I pulled up the GPS tracker I had installed in her car 2 days ago. Her little errand was leading her straight to the same motel. Of course it was. I called Paul Ridley. "Paul, I need one more thing." He didn't even sound surprised. "What's that?" "I need video footage inside the motel. Proof that they're actually going inside a room together." He exhaled. "That's tricky. Not exactly legal to record inside private property." I ran a hand over my face. "Fine. Then I need them on audio." Paul was silent for a moment, then said, "I can get you that." "How soon?" "I already have contacts at that motel. Give me an hour." I nodded. "Do it." 2 hours later, I sat in my car in a parking lot, listening to the final nail in the coffin. Paul had sent me an audio file. And when I pressed play, I heard Lisa's voice. Laughing. Whispering. And then, his voice, God, I wish we had more than a couple of hours. I hate sneaking around like this. Lisa's reply was soft. "I know. But he can't find out. Not yet. Not yet." That was all I needed to hear. I closed my eyes, gripping the steering wheel as the recording continued. The sound of a kiss. A moan. I shut it off before I could hear any more. That was it. This wasn't just casual cheating. She was in love with him. She was planning something. And she was waiting for the right moment to tell me. She thought she was in control of the situation. She had no idea how wrong she was. I drove home, my mind cold and calculated. I had more than enough proof now. More than I needed. But I wasn't just going to confront her. No. That was too easy. Lisa had been playing me for a fool. It was time for me to play her right back. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone in my hands. The recording was still open on my screen, Lisa's voice lingering in my head like a ghost I couldn't shake. I know. But he can't find out. Not yet. Not yet. What the hell did that mean? Was she planning to leave me? Was she just waiting for the right moment? Or was she too much of a coward to do it herself? A cold realization settled over me. She wasn't going to tell me. She was going to keep lying until she had everything lined up perfectly, until she felt safe enough to walk away on her own terms. No. I wasn't going to let that happen. She had already taken too much from me, my trust, my peace, my marriage, but she wouldn't take my dignity. If she thought she was in control, she was about to learn how wrong she was. That evening, Lisa came home acting like nothing had happened. She kissed my cheek, her smile warm. "Hey, babe." My stomach turned at her touch, but I forced myself to act normal. I had to be careful now. I smiled back. "Hey. How was your day?" She let out a soft sigh, slipping off her shoes. "Ugh, exhausting. I ran so many errands, and the traffic was awful." "Lies." I kept my face neutral. "Yeah. Where'd you go?" She listed off a few places: the grocery store, the mall, a quick stop at the bank. All bullshit. And yet, she didn't flinch. She was so good at lying now that it came effortlessly. She walked into the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine. "How about you? Anything exciting?" I shook my head, taking a sip of my own drink. "Just the usual." She smiled, leaning against the counter. "We should do something fun this weekend. Maybe a little getaway." The audacity of it nearly made me choke on my drink. She wanted a getaway, while she was sneaking off to a motel with her secret lover. I forced myself to smile. "That sounds nice." I could see the relief in her eyes. She thought she had me right where she wanted me. That was good. She had no idea that I was about to destroy her world. The next morning, I put my plan into motion. I had one goal: to turn the tables before she could. First, I called my lawyer. His name was Sam Ridley, a no-nonsense divorce attorney who had been handling cases like mine for over 20 years. When I explained my situation, he didn't even sound surprised. "Do you have proof?" I exhaled. "Plenty. Photos, videos, phone records, and even audio of her admitting to the affair. There was a pause. Then Sam said, "Then we'll make sure she gets nothing." That was all I needed to hear. I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to make sure she walked away with nothing. That afternoon, I met with my financial advisor. I froze our joint accounts, rerouted my direct deposits to a private account in my name only, and made sure Lisa would have zero access to my money. If she wanted to be with her lover, she could let him pay her bills. Next, I visited a DNA testing clinic. I had always assumed our son, Ethan, was mine. But now, I couldn't be sure of anything. If Lisa had been lying to me for months, who's to say she hadn't been lying for years? The nurse took my swab and reassured me that I'd have the results in a few days. I hoped to God I was wrong. But if I wasn't, I didn't even know what I'd do. That night, Lisa curled up next to me in bed, her head resting on my chest. It took everything in me not to push her away. She sighed softly. "I love you." I closed my eyes. She didn't love me. She loved the lie she had built. She loved the comfort of our marriage, the security I provided. But love doesn't betray. I kissed the top of her head. "I love you too." A lie for a lie. And just like that, the countdown to her downfall had begun. The next morning, I woke up before Lisa. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe, knowing that everything about her, everything about our life, was a lie. I turned my head to look at her. She was curled up on her side, her dark hair spilling over her pillow, her lips slightly parted. If I didn't know the truth, I would have thought she was peaceful, content, happy. But I did know the truth. And that truth burned inside me like a sickness I couldn't get rid of. I got up, moving quietly so I wouldn't wake her, and went downstairs. My coffee was already brewing by the time my phone buzzed with a new email. Subject * DNA test results. Urgent. My heart pounded as I opened the message. Dear Mr. Carter, attached are the paternity test results as requested. Based on the DNA analysis, there is a 0% probability that you are the biological father of Ethan Carter. The air was sucked out of my lungs. I read it again. And again. But the words didn't change. Ethan isn't my son. The coffee pot beeped in the background, but I barely heard it. I gripped the counter, trying to steady myself. I had prepared myself for this. I had told myself that there was a chance. But seeing it in black and white, knowing for certain, it was like someone had punched me in the gut. Ethan wasn't mine. I had raised him, loved him, held him when he was a newborn. I had stayed up all night when he had fevers. I had taught him how to ride a bike. And he wasn't mine. Lisa had let me believe he was my son for 7 years. I had spent 7 years of my life raising another man's child without knowing it. I swallowed hard. My hands clenched into fists, my vision blurring with rage. Lisa had taken everything from me. But she wasn't going to take anything else. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the test results until I heard her footsteps coming down the stairs. She walked into the kitchen in her robe, stretching and yawning like she had no idea her world was about to end. "Morning," she said with a sleepy smile. I didn't answer. She walked past me to pour herself a cup of coffee, completely unaware that I was watching her like a predator watches its prey. Finally, she turned around, leaning against the counter. "You okay? You look off." I studied her. The woman I had loved. The woman who had destroyed me, ***. "I'm fine," I said, voice flat. She tilted her head, sensing something was wrong. "Are you sure?" I exhaled slowly. "Actually, no. I got some news this morning." Lisa's brows furrowed. "What news?" I picked up the envelope from the table and slid it toward her. "Why don't you read it?" She hesitated, glancing at me, then opened the envelope and pulled out the paper inside. Her face changed instantly. Her skin went pale. Her hands trembled. She knew. Her eyes darted up to mine, filled with something I hadn't seen before. Fear. Jim. I didn't blink. "Say it." Her lip quivered. I can explain. ***, say it, Lisa. Say the words, ***. Tears welled up in her eyes. You're not Ethan's father. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, as if hearing it from her made it real. And then I let the rage settle inside me. Controlled. Calculated. Asterisk asterisk. How long? I asked. She wiped at her tears. It was a mistake. Asterisk asterisk. How long, Lisa? Asterisk asterisk. She swallowed hard, shaking her head. 7 years. A hollow laugh escaped my lips. 7 years. 7 fucking years, and you never once thought to tell me the truth. I didn't know for sure at first, she cried. I was scared, Jim. I thought. I slammed my fist on the table, making her jump. Asterisk asterisk. You thought what? Asterisk asterisk. That I'd never find out? That you could keep up this lie forever. Lisa sobbed, covering her mouth. I was trying to protect you. I scoffed, shaking my head. Protect me. I repeated, my voice low, dangerous. Lisa, you didn't protect me. You robbed me. You stole my right to know the truth. You let me raise another man's child. But you love him, she interrupted, her voice desperate. You love Ethan. You're the only father he's ever known. I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. Asterisk asterisk. Don't you dare use him to justify what you did. Asterisk asterisk. Her sobs grew harder, but I didn't care. She wasn't crying because she was sorry. She was crying because she got caught. I took a deep breath, controlling myself. I couldn't afford to lose it. Not now. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the email with my lawyer's contact information. What are you doing? Lisa asked, her voice shaky. I held the phone to my ear, meeting her panicked gaze. Ending this, I said. Her face crumbled. No, Jim, please. I turned away as my lawyer answered. Sam, it's time. File the divorce papers. Lisa collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. And I walked out of the kitchen. Out of her life. Because she had already walked out of mine 7 years ago. I didn't look back. As I stepped out of the kitchen, Lisa's sobs echoed behind me, but I felt nothing. No pity. No sadness. Nothing but the cold, undeniable truth that this marriage had been over for years. I was just the last one to realize it. I walked straight to my office and closed the door, the weight of the moment pressing against my chest. My hands were still shaking as I placed my phone on the desk. Lisa had begged me not to call the lawyer. But she had 7 years to tell me the truth. I had given her love, trust, loyalty, and in return, she had given me lies, betrayal, and another man's child. My phone buzzed. Sam Ridley, incoming call. I exhaled and picked up. Sam. Jim. I got your message. Are you sure about this? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. More sure than I've ever been about anything in my life. There was a brief silence. All right. I'll start the paperwork immediately. We'll file for divorce under adultery, and given the evidence you provided, she won't get much. Custody might be trickier, but with the DNA test proving Ethan isn't yours, you're not legally obligated to support him. I swallowed hard. Ethan. God, I loved that boy. He wasn't mine by blood, but that didn't mean I could just walk away from him like he meant nothing. I don't want to abandon Ethan, I admitted, my voice quieter now. He's still my son in every way that matters. Sam sighed. I get that. But this is something you need to think about carefully. If you fight for custody or visitation, you're opening a door that Lisa can use against you later. If she realizes that you still love him, she might use him to manipulate you into staying. I closed my eyes. I hadn't even thought of that. Lisa wasn't above using any leverage to keep control. I clenched my jaw. Just file the papers. I'll figure out Ethan later. All right, Jim. I'll have them ready by tomorrow morning. I hung up and let out a long breath. Tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, my marriage would officially start to unravel. When I stepped out of the office, the house was eerily quiet. Lisa was still sitting on the kitchen floor, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her face was pale, eyes red and puffy from crying. She looked up at me, her lips trembling. Are you really going to do this? I met her gaze, completely unshaken. Yes. She let out a choked sob. Jim, I made a mistake, But I love you. I love our family. Can't we fix this? I scoffed. Fix this? Lisa, this isn't some minor mistake. This isn't something you just apologize for and move on from. You lied to me for 7 years. 7 fucking years, asterisk asterisk. I was scared, she whispered. Bullshit, I shot back. You weren't scared. You were selfish. You wanted to have your affair and still keep the security of our marriage. You didn't care about how this would affect me, or even Ethan. She flinched at his name. You love him. I sighed, my anger simmering into something heavier. Yeah, I do. She reached for me, but I took a step back. You don't get to use him against me, Lisa, I warned. You don't get to pretend like what you did was okay just because I love Ethan. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Jim, please, we can go to therapy. We can. No, I said firmly. You already made your choice, Lisa. You just didn't think I'd ever find out. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing harder. I had never seen her like this. Lisa was always so composed, so in control. And now, she was completely broken. Good. Because she had broken me first. That night, I slept in the guest room. I didn't even bother packing any of my things from our bedroom. I just needed to be as far away from her as possible. I lay on the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep that never came. I thought about Ethan. I thought about how I was supposed to tell him. He was only 7. He wouldn't understand the words DNA test or paternity fraud. All he would know was that the man who had tucked him in every night, who had held his hand when he was scared, was suddenly not there anymore. And that killed me. I didn't know how long I lay there, lost in my thoughts. At some point, I heard the sound of Lisa's soft footsteps outside the room. She didn't knock, but she stood there for a long time. Waiting. Hoping. But I didn't open the door. And eventually, she walked away. The next morning, Lisa was already awake when I came downstairs. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee like it was the only thing keeping her together. Her eyes were hollow. I had seen her cry before. But this was different. She looked defeated. I grabbed my own coffee and sat down across from her. For a long moment, we didn't speak. Then, finally, she looked at me. What happens now? I took a sip of my coffee before answering. Now. I repeated. Now, we get a divorce. Lisa swallowed, blinking rapidly. And Ethan? I sighed, my chest tightening. That depends on you. She stared at me, confused. What do you mean? I leaned forward, my voice calm but firm. I'm not going to fight you for custody. But I swear to God, if you ever tell Ethan that I stopped loving him, if you ever try to turn him against me, I will destroy you. Her eyes widened. I wouldn't do that. I let out a bitter laugh. You've already done worse, Lisa. She winced, but didn't argue. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she whispered, I don't want to lose you. You lost me a long time ago. She wiped at her tears and nodded. Can we at least not tell Ethan yet? Not until we figure out how to explain it. I exhaled, rubbing a hand over my face. Fine. But I want time with him. Just me and him. She nodded quickly. Of course. I stood up, grabbing my keys. Where are you going? She asked, her voice small. I didn't look at her as I walked to the door. Anywhere but here. And then I was gone. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. The morning air was cool, the sky an overcast gray that mirrored the heaviness in my chest. My mind was a tangled mess of emotions. Asterisk asterisk rage, grief, betrayal, exhaustion, asterisk asterisk. I had spent the past few days uncovering the truth, and now that I finally had all my answers, I didn't feel any better. If anything, I felt worse. I pulled into a small parking lot near a quiet lake on the outskirts of town. It was a place I used to come to when I needed to think, before marriage, before kids, before everything got so complicated. I turned off the engine and just sat there, staring at the water. Ethan's face flashed through my mind. How the hell was I supposed to look him in the eye and pretend everything was okay? He wasn't my son. Not by blood. But he was still my son. I had raised him, held him, loved him. I had been there for every birthday, every scraped knee, every nightmare. And now, I was supposed to just walk away? The thought made me sick. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone. I hesitated for a moment, then dialed. After a few rings, my lawyer picked up. "Jim." "Sam," I said, rubbing my temple. "I need to talk about Ethan." Sam sighed. "I figured you would. I don't want to fight Lisa for custody," I admitted. "But I also don't want to disappear from his life." "You don't have a legal claim to him," Sam reminded me. "Not unless Lisa agrees to a custody arrangement voluntarily." I swallowed hard. "And if she doesn't?" "Then you have two options," Sam said. "One, you accept that Ethan isn't legally yours and let Lisa decide how much contact you'll have with him. Or two," he hesitated. I gritted my teeth. "Or two what?" "You could petition for parental rights under psychological parentage," Sam explained. "You've raised him since birth. You've been his father in every way that counts. A judge might recognize that and grant you visitation, but it would be an uphill battle, especially if Lisa fights it." I exhaled sharply, pressing my fingers against my eyes. "I don't want a battle." "Then you need to talk to Lisa," Sam said. "If she's willing to put Ethan's well-being first, you might be able to work something out without dragging this through court." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "All right. Thanks, Sam. Keep me updated." I hung up and stared at my phone for a long moment. Then, finally, I dialed Lisa's number. She picked up on the first ring. "Jim, I want to see Ethan," I said without preamble. There was a pause. "Okay," she said softly. "When?" "Now." Lisa hesitated. "Jim, I don't know if—" "I'm not asking for permission, Lisa," I cut in. "I just need some time with him. Alone." Silence. Then, finally, she sighed. "All right. Come home." When I walked into the house, Ethan was sitting on the couch, flipping through a picture book. He looked up and grinned when he saw me. "Daddy." My heart clenched. I forced a smile and crouched down in front of him. "Hey, buddy. Wanna go for a drive with me?" Ethan nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah. Can we get ice cream?" "Of course," I said, ruffling his hair. Lisa stood in the doorway, watching us with unreadable eyes. I met her gaze but said nothing. She didn't try to stop me. I took Ethan's hand, and together, we walked out the door. For now, that was enough. #11. Ethan sat in the back seat, kicking his feet against the seat as he licked his ice cream cone. The radio played softly in the background, but my mind was too cluttered to pay attention. I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror, wondering how the hell I was going to do this. He was only 7. How do you tell a child that the life he's known is a lie? "Daddy." His voice pulled me out of my thoughts. I forced a smile. "Yeah, bud. Are you mad at Mommy?" I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, my stomach twisting. "Why do you ask that?" He took another lick of his ice cream, thinking. "She was crying a lot last night. I asked what was wrong, and she just hugged me and said everything was okay. But she didn't look okay." I swallowed hard. "Mommy and we have some things we need to talk about. Are you getting a divorce?" His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had expected this conversation to come, but I wasn't ready for it. I turned the car into a quiet park, pulling into an empty lot. I shut off the engine and twisted in my seat to face him. "Ethan, what do you know about divorce?" He shrugged, licking at the edges of his melting ice cream. "Jake's parents are divorced. He has 2 houses now. He says it's kinda cool because he gets 2 Christmases, but sometimes he says he misses when they were all together." I nodded, trying to keep my breathing steady. "Yeah, divorce means that Mommy and I won't be living together anymore. But it doesn't mean we don't love you." Ethan's face scrunched in confusion. "But, if you love me, why don't you just stay?" God, how was I supposed to explain something like this? I reached back and wiped a bit of melted ice cream off his chin with a napkin. Sometimes, grown-ups have problems that they can't fix. And when that happens, they have to make hard choices. His little brows knitted together, and he stared at his ice cream, thinking. "Are you mad at me?" My heart shattered. "No. Never. I turned around fully in my seat, my voice firm but gentle. Ethan, listen to me. This is not your fault. Not even a little bit. I love you, buddy. That will never, ever change. No matter where I live, no matter what happens between me and Mommy, you are still my son. The words came out before I could stop them. You are still my son. And in that moment, I realized that the DNA test didn't matter. Blood didn't make a father. Love did. Ethan studied my face for a long moment, his little brown eyes searching mine. Then he nodded and smiled. Okay. I exhaled, tension releasing from my shoulders. I had no idea how much he understood, but for now, it was enough. I let out a chuckle, ruffling his hair. Now hurry up and finish that ice cream before it melts all over my car. Ethan giggled, licking at the edges before they could drip onto his fingers. I'm trying. I smiled, watching him for a moment longer. For the first time in days, something inside me felt lighter. I had lost my wife. But I wasn't going to lose my son. No matter what happened next. Ethan sat in the back seat, kicking his feet against the seat as he licked his ice cream cone. The radio played softly in the background, but my mind was too cluttered to pay attention. I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror, wondering how the hell I was going to do this. He was only 7. How do you tell a child that the life he's known is a lie? Daddy. His voice pulled me out of my thoughts. I forced a smile. Yeah, bud. Are you mad at Mommy? I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, my stomach twisting. Why do you ask that? He took another lick of his ice cream, thinking. She was crying a lot last night. I asked what was wrong, and she just hugged me and said everything was okay. But she didn't look okay. I swallowed hard. Mommy and we have some things we need to talk about. Are you getting a divorce? His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had expected this conversation to come, but I wasn't ready for it. I turned the car into a quiet park, pulling into an empty lot. I shut off the engine and twisted in my seat to face him. Ethan, what do you know about divorce? He shrugged, licking at the edges of his melting ice cream. Jake's parents are divorced. He has 2 houses now. He says it's kinda cool because he gets 2 Christmases, but sometimes he says he misses when they were all together. I nodded, trying to keep my breathing steady. Yeah, divorce means that Mommy and I won't be living together anymore. But it doesn't mean we don't love you. Ethan's face scrunched in confusion. But, if you love me, why don't you just stay? God. How was I supposed to explain something like this? I reached back and wiped a bit of melted ice cream off his chin with a napkin. Sometimes, grown-ups have problems that they can't fix. And when that happens, they have to make hard choices. His little brows knitted together, and he stared at his ice cream, thinking. Are you mad at me? My heart shattered. No. Never. I turned around fully in my seat, my voice firm but gentle. Ethan, listen to me. This is not your fault. Not even a little bit. I love you, buddy. That will never, ever change. No matter where I live, no matter what happens between me and Mommy, you are still my son. The words came out before I could stop them. You are still my son. And in that moment, I realized that the DNA test didn't matter. Blood didn't make a father. Love did. Ethan studied my face for a long moment, his little brown eyes searching mine. Then he nodded and smiled. Okay. I exhaled, tension releasing from my shoulders. I had no idea how much he understood, but for now, it was enough. I let out a chuckle, ruffling his hair. Now hurry up and finish that ice cream before it melts all over my car. Ethan giggled, licking at the edges before they could drip onto his fingers. I'm trying. I smiled, watching him for a moment longer. For the first time in days, something inside me felt lighter. I had lost my wife. But I wasn't going to lose my son. No matter what happened next. The drive back home was quiet, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. Ethan hummed softly to himself, tapping his fingers on the car door as he stared out the window. His ice cream was long gone, and he seemed content, as if nothing had changed, For him, nothing had. But for me, everything had. When we pulled into the driveway, Lisa was already waiting at the door, arms crossed, her face tense. As soon as Ethan unbuckled his seatbelt, she stepped forward, forcing a smile. "Hey, baby. Did you have fun?" Ethan grinned. "Yeah. Daddy took me for ice cream." Lisa's eyes flickered to mine, searching for something, but I gave her nothing. She reached for Ethan's hand, but he hesitated. "Can Daddy tuck me in tonight?" Lisa froze. Just for a second. And I saw it. The flash of fear in her eyes. She knew she was losing control. I kept my face neutral, waiting for her to object. But after a pause, she forced a small nod. "Of course, baby." Ethan smiled and took my hand instead, leading me inside like nothing was wrong. But everything was. And Lisa knew it. That night, I lay beside Ethan in his small twin bed, listening to his soft, steady breathing. I had tucked him in the same way I always had, story first, then the teddy bear tuck where I wrapped the blanket around him just right, so he felt safe It was our routine. And it hit me, right there in the dim glow of his nightlight, that this might be one of the last times I'd get to do this. Not because I wanted it to be. Because Lisa might not let me. I had seen it in her eyes earlier, that flicker of hesitation, of calculation, She knew Ethan loved me. And she knew she could use that against me. My stomach twisted, but I didn't let it show. I leaned down and pressed a kiss to Ethan's forehead. "Good night, buddy." He smiled sleepily. "Good night, Daddy." I sat there for a few minutes longer, watching him drift off, memorizing everything. The way his tiny hands curled under his cheek. The way his chest rose and fell in a soft, steady rhythm. The way his lips twitched slightly in his sleep, like he was dreaming. I wasn't his father by blood. But I was still his father. And no DNA test was going to take that away from me. When I stepped out of Ethan's room, Lisa was waiting in the hallway. We stared at each other in silence for a long moment. Then she whispered, "You told him, didn't you?" I crossed my arms. "I told him we were getting a divorce. I told him I loved him. That's all he needed to hear." Her shoulders sagged with relief. "Jim, Don't," I cut her off. "Don't try to explain it. Don't try to justify it. I don't want your excuses, Lisa." She flinched, but I didn't care. 4 years, I had been a good husband. I had trusted her. I had built a life with her. And she had torn it apart. She swallowed hard. "What happens now?" I exhaled. "Now, we do what's best for Ethan. Not for you. Not for me. For him." Her eyes searched mine. "And what do you think that is?" I met her gaze, unwavering. "Letting me see him. Letting me be his father. Because that's what I am, Lisa. No matter what that test says." A tear slipped down her cheek. "You really mean that?" I clenched my jaw. "I mean every goddamn word." She nodded slowly. "Okay." For the first time in days, she didn't lie. And I knew, no matter how broken we were, no matter how much she had hurt me, we were still parents, And that was the one thing we couldn't afford to break. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork, meetings with my lawyer, and quiet moments with Ethan. Lisa and I barely spoke beyond what was necessary. She had stopped trying to justify herself, and I had stopped expecting her to. The divorce papers were filed within the week. She didn't contest them. She knew she had nothing to stand on. The only discussion that truly mattered was Ethan. And to my surprise, she didn't fight me on that either. Maybe she knew that no matter what, she couldn't erase the bond one had with him. Maybe, for once, she was actually putting him first. Or maybe she was just too tired of lying. Either way, we agreed to joint custody, an informal arrangement where Ethan would spend time with both of us. No court battles, no drawn-out fights. I'd like to say it was because Lisa had a conscience. But deep down, I knew it was because she was scared of what I might do if she pushed me. I had the evidence to destroy her. And she knew it. The day I packed my things was quiet. Ethan didn't fully understand what was happening, but he knew enough. When I zipped up my suitcase, he stood in the doorway of my bedroom, hugging his stuffed dinosaur. "Do I still get to see you?" he asked, his voice small. I crouched down in front of him. "Always, buddy." You're stuck with me forever. He smiled a little at that, but his eyes were glassy. But you won't be here when I wake up. My chest ached. I reached forward and pulled him into a hug, holding him tightly. No, but I'll always be just a phone call away. And you'll have your own room at my new place. We'll still have movie nights, and I'll still make you pancakes on Sundays, okay? He sniffled but nodded against my shoulder. And I knew then, it didn't matter what Lisa had done. It didn't matter that he wasn't mine by blood, He was mine where it counted. And that would never change. I didn't say much to Lisa when I left. There was nothing left to say. We weren't enemies. We weren't friends. We were just two people who had once shared a life and now had to figure out how to coexist for the sake of a child. She stood by the door as I carried out my last box. Jim, she said quietly. I paused but didn't look at her. I'm sorry, she whispered. I let out a slow breath. Then I turned to face her, meeting her gaze one last time. I know, I said. And then I walked away. For good. #epilogue. Life didn't magically fix itself overnight. There were days when I still felt the sting of betrayal, when I caught myself remembering the good times and wondering if any of it had ever been real. But I never let it consume me. I focused on moving forward. I found a new place. I built a new routine. I adjusted to a life where I wasn't someone's husband anymore. And most importantly, I never let Ethan feel the weight of what had happened. To him, I was still Dad. And that was enough. One night, as I tucked him into bed at my new apartment, he looked up at me and grinned. I think you're the best dad ever. I smiled, my chest tightening. Yeah. He nodded. Yeah. Even if you don't live in the same house anymore, you're still my dad, right? I ruffled his hair. Always. And for the first time in a long time, I knew that no matter what Lisa had taken from me, she could never take that, Not now. Not ever. The end.